Good morning to all. Today's lecture is Introduction to Post-Quantum Cryptography. Overview: Hash-based cryptography, code-based cryptography, lattice-based cryptography, multivariate and isogeny-based cryptography, and we are going to see NIST's proposal and challenges. Quantum computer is incredibly useful for various fields because of its speed, efficiency, and reliability. But from cryptographic perspective, it opens up different lines of attacks with different set of quantum algorithms. The Shor's algorithm, when it runs in quantum computer, it can solve the integer factorization problem and discrete log problem. These problems are the basis for many cryptographic schemes like RSA, Diffie-Hellman, etc. So, imagine 5 years from now, if somebody builds a large quantum computer, then RSA is dead, elliptic curve is dead, Diffie-Hellman is dead, DSA, class group, whatever, dead. So users will be screaming and saying, oh my god, what do we do next? Don't panic. We have other quantum safe cryptographic schemes. There are few symmetric key cryptographic systems and post-quantum cryptographic systems. The symmetric key cryptographic systems that includes AES one-time pad hash function will survive. Just by increasing the sizes of the keys, these systems are able to resist quantum attacks. Another important quantum resistant systems are post-quantum cryptographic systems. They are classical systems. They run on conventional computers, laptop, PC, and they do not require quantum computer. They run on conventional systems just like RSA, Diffie-Hellman, elliptic curve, etc. They are believed to be quantum safe. There are no fast quantum algorithms against these crypto systems. Hence, they are secure against attacks by conventional computers and by quantum computers. There are various branches of post-quantum cryptography. They are hash-based cryptography, code-based, lattice-based, multivariate, and isogeny-based cryptography. They have different engineering properties. Fundamentally, they are different. They are based on different mathematical problems which are hard to solve even in the phase of quantum computing. Each cryptography has different pros and cons. When compared, some of them are faster than other, some have smaller key sizes than other. So let us see each cryptography, its pros and cons, and the few hard problems in each cryptography. So first we are going to see hash-based cryptography. Before that, let us see what is a cryptographic hash function. It is nothing but a deterministic function which maps a bit string of arbitrary length to a bit string of fixed length. And it has the following properties. One way, it is nothing but a given a hashed value h, it should be computationally infeasible to find an input string x such that h equal to h of x. That is, given a hash value h, it is computationally infeasible to find out the pre-image of the hash value. And the second pre-image resistance states that given x, it should be computationally infeasible to find another string y such that h of x is equal to h of y. Collision resistant states that it is computationally infeasible to find two different inputs which are mapped to the same hash value. Hash-based cryptography deals with the construction of cryptographic primitives based on the security of the hash functions. So it is based on one-wayness, second pre-image resistant, and collision resistant. So unlike RSA Diffie-Hellman, the crypto primitives under hash-based cryptography are based on one-way function. They are not based on trapdoor function. So that is In the construction of encryption and decryption process, we know that for encryption process it requires one way function, and for decryption process it requires trapdoor function. As there are no trapdoor functions in hash based cryptography, it doesn't support the decryption process. Hence there is no crypto system under hash based cryptography. It is limited to digital signature schemes. And initially, one-time signature schemes that include Lamport, Diffie-Hellman, and Winternet schemes are constructed. One-time signature scheme means the signature key is used to sign only one message securely. Using one-time signature scheme as building block, few-time signature scheme is constructed. Let us see an Lamport one-time signature scheme in detail. In 1979, Leslie Lamport invented the first hash-based signature scheme. The goal is to sign 256-bit messages. For example, let us consider the message of 8 bits. So generate two random bit strings, each of 8 bits. Refer each one by an index sk0, sk1. They represents the secret key. Hash every one of those random strings using the hash function h. This produces the public key pk0, pk1. So here we have taken two random strings of length 8 and denoted by sk0, sk1. Hash these two random strings, we obtain the public strings as pk0 and pk1. Signature generation. To sign a message M of 256 bits. Here we have taken 8 bits. The value of each message bit is either 0 or 1. Depending on the value, select a string from the strings sk0, sk1. See here we have taken a message of length 8. So depending upon the value of the message bits, we have to choose the values from sk0 and sk1. See here the first value is 0. So we have to choose sk0, the first secret value from sk0. The second bit value is 1. So we have to select this sk1 and choose the second secret value from sk1. The third bit value is 1. So we have to choose sk1 and grab the third secret value. That is the secret value in the third position from sk1. So we have the secret values. So the concatenation of all the secret values gives the signature of the corresponding message. Signature verification. The receiver with the public key pk0, pk1 and the message M and the signature computes the hash of the signature values. That is, so now the receiver has the message signature and the public key. Remember, the public keys are obtained by hashing the secret keys. So the signature is nothing but the secret values. So to verify the signature, just hash these secret values and verify with the public key. See, the message, the value in the first bit is 0. So we have to hash the secret value in the first place and verify with pk0. So here the second bit value is 1. So hash the secret value in the second position of the signature and verify it with pk1. So similarly, the third secret value is hashed and verified with the third value in the pk1 as the message bit corresponds to it is 1. So we can do the verification process similarly for all the bits. So for an attacker, when he has a public key to generate a new message signature, he needs the secret values. So with the knowledge of the public key, finding the secret values is nothing but the signature. Finding the secret value is nothing but breaking the pre-image resistance of the hash function. So the security of the signature depends upon the pre-image resistance of the hash function. So unforgeability of Lamport one-time signature can be reduced to the pre-image resistance of the hash function. So what happened when Lamport signature is used twice? So Lamport signature reveals exactly one of the two possible secret key values at each position. So suppose an attacker has two message signature pair for the same key. Now he is able to compute the signature for the new message. See, this is the new message he has. He is able to compute the signature for this new message with the knowledge of the message signature pair. See, the new message, the first bit value for the new message is 0. So he can grab the secret value from the message signature pair. From the first message signature pair, the secret value is 1. The second bit of the message is 1. So he can grab the secret value 2 corresponds to the bit value 1. The third message bit is 1. So he can grab the value, secret value for the message bit 1 from the message signature pair, the second message signature pair, it is 3. Thus he can compute the signature for the message by mixmax forgery attack. So this is the signature obtained for the message he generated. So when an attacker has two message signature pair for the same key, then he is able to generate a new message signature. So by using the mix match strategy. So this hence to avoid this attack, the Lamport's signature key is used only once. Ralph Merkle proposed a meta construction with a binary tree which enables the conversion of one-time signature scheme into many-time signature scheme. Merkle's construction is called the Merkle's signature scheme. The central idea is to combine large number of one-time key pairs into a single structure, giving practical way to sign more than once, yet a limited number of messages. So Merkle's signature scheme can be used to sign a limited number of messages, say n is equal to 2 power n with one public key. Generate one-time public and private key pairs yi comma xi with 1 less than or equal to I less than or equal to 2 power n. So let us look at this example. This Merkle tree is used to sign 8 messages to cube, that is 8 messages, as we have 8 nodes in the leaf. That is hash the public keys, that is that they are in the leaf nodes. That is compute a hash of the public keys which are the leaves of the binary tree. So each inner node. So before that, let us label the nodes of the tree. And here AI, let each node is labeled as Aij, where I denotes the level of the node and J denotes the index. Level is nothing but the distance of the node from the leaf. Hence the leaf nodes are at the level 0. The next parent node will be in the level 1. Next will be in the level 2, and the root node will be in the level 3 for in this example. So hash the public keys and they are at the leaves of this binary tree. Then the inner node of the tree is the hash value of the concatenation of its two children. That is A10 is the hash of the values at A00 and A01. And A11, the value at the node A11 is nothing but the hash of the values at A02 and A03. And the value at A12 is hash of A04 and A05, and A13 is hash of A06 and A07. Similarly, the value at A20 is nothing but the hash of the values at A10 and A11, and the value at A21 is the hash of the values at A12 and concatenated with A13, and the root node A30 is nothing but the hash value of the values at A20 concatenated with A21. So the root A30 is the public key pub of the Merkle signature scheme for this example. So the one-time signature of M with the key pair xi comma yi is sign dash. The corresponding leaf is A0i, that is the hash of the public key yi. The path A consists of n plus 1 nodes A0, A1, etc. An. So in this example, let us take the green node. So the path of this green node to the root node consists of 4 nodes. So if the green node is taken as A0, then the parent node is the first parent is denoted as A1, the next parent is A2, and the root node is denoted as A3. So the path from the green node to the root node consists of 4 nodes A0, A1, A2, and A3. To compute A1, it requires the values of the children nodes, the green node as well as this red node. The red node is denoted as the brother node of the green node is denoted as rth node. And to compute A2, it requires the red node, that is and the path node A1. The red node here, this node is denoted as rth1, and rth1 and the path node A1 is used to compute A2. And to compute A3, this red node is required, that is denoted by R3, and the path node A2. They are used to compute A3. A3 is nothing but the hash of the path node A2 and the rth node. So the signer first computes the one-time signature, sign dash, and he concatenates the record path nodes. Sorry, he concatenates the signature along with the auth nodes, and he transmits the signature along with the message to the receiver. The receiver, while receiving the message and the signature, he verifies the signature as below. First, he verifies the one-time signature with the corresponding one-time public key yi. Now he verifies the signature with the public key pub of the Merkle tree. The verifier uses this auth nodes and computes the path from the leaf to the root node. Once is able to compute the root node and he verifies with the public key in the directory, when it is verified, he accepts the signature. That is, verifies the one time. First, he verifies the one time signature sign dash of the message. Then the receiver computes the hash of the public key yi, that is which is used to sign the one time signature, and he gets this A0. Then, using the auth nodes, which is received from the sender, he computes the nodes of the path A. If AN equals the public key pub of the Merkle signature is valid. So, in order to do a forgery in this Merkle signature, an attacker can do the forgery in this one-time signature, or he can compute the auth nodes by himself. So, doing a forgery in one-time signature is nothing but breaking the one-time signature, and he is computing the auth nodes, means he is breaking the hash functions which are in the nodes. Auth nodes are nothing but the hash values. So unforgeability of the Merkle signatures scheme is based on the collision resistance of the hash function used in the binary tree and the unforgeability of the underlying one-time signature scheme. So let us see the pros and cons of hash-based signatures scheme. So the advantages, these schemes require less security assumptions. They require only the security of the hash function. They are very efficient. If a hash function becomes insecure, it is sufficient to replace it with a different hash. So replace with the secure hash function. The limitation of hash-based signature schemes. The number of signatures are limited per public-private key. The signatures are large in size. There are no hash-based encryption schemes. Next, we can see the code-based cryptography. So before that, let us see what is an error correction techniques. Consider a space shuttle is transforming information to its base station. Due to the noises in the communication, error may occur in the transmitted message. How can we correct this error? To detect and correct the errors, some extra bits are added with the message during the transmission. These extra bits are called as parity bits or check bits. See here, the message is concatenated with the extra bits. The resultant is denoted by C. So when you take a message of 5 bits, when it is multiplied with a matrix of order 5 cross 9, the resultant is a 9-bit string. That is, 4 bits are added with a message bit string. So these 4 bits are used to detect and correct the errors. Say, look here, the 5-bit message string, that is a message string of length 5, is multiplied with the matrix, and the resultant is a bit string of length 9, and it is transmitted through the channel. So the error may occur. You may get a flip-flop in the bits. So when you use a proper error correction technique, you can detect and correct the errors. If the error correction technique is an efficient technique, then you can correct all the errors in the received word and you can decode the message. So there is a relation between the matrix used here and the error correction technique. We say that the error correction, the matrix is a good matrix when it corresponds to the to an efficient error correction technique. So this is the now we are going to see the idea of Merkle's crypto system. So Merkle's uses the error correcting code is the algorithmic basis for the code-based cryptography. That is the good matrix corresponds to the efficient error correcting technique is considered as the private key, and two matrices are multiplied are used to hide the structure of this good matrix. That is, the good matrix is pre-multiplied and post-multiplied by two matrices, and the resultant matrix is a bad matrix which hides the structure of the good matrix. So the resultant bad matrix is considered as the Bob's public key, and the good matrix along with the two matrices are considered as Bob's private key. So in the public key crypto system, when Allies wants to send a message to Bob securely, then Allies will be using Bob's public key to encrypt the message, and Bob will be using his private key to decrypt the message. So Allies first takes the message, she multiplies with the Bob's public key. So she gets the code word. So in that, uh, see, just in error correction technique, this code word is transmitted in the channel. But in the code based cryptography, what is Alice doing is, after multiplying with the Bob's public key, she purposely adding some errors in the code word. Then she transmits that code, that resultant word, through the transmission channel to Bob. Bob, on receiving that word, he uses his private key to decode the original message. This his private key is nothing but the good matrix along with the two matrices. The good matrix enables him to decode the original message. Attacker, on grabbing that receive word from the channel, to decode the message, the attacker needs to find the error correction with a proper error correction techniques. That is, the attacker needs to find the error, as well as he needs to find the error correction technique to decode the message. So let us see some basic concepts of coding theory, in particular linear codes. So first we see what is F2N. F2N is nothing but the collection of bit strings of length n. A binary code C of length n is a subspace of F2N. It is a subspace, so it has a basis. So the basis consists of k elements. Hence, the linear code C is of k dimension. So a generator matrix of a n comma k linear code C is a k cross n matrix G whose row vectors forms the basis for the vector subspace C. So we have seen this code C is a subspace of F2N. It has a basis of it has a basis with with k elements. So this basis forms the row vectors of a matrix of order k cross n, and this matrix is called the generator matrix of the code C. That is, C is nothing but the collection of all m into G. So the matrix G maps a bit string of length k to a bit string of length n. So this generator matrix used to encode a message of length k to a bit string of length n. So next we can see the distance and correction capacity of the code. So consider two words of length n, that is two bit strings of length n. So the Hamming distance is nothing but the number of coordinates they differ. And the Hamming weight of a word of length n, that is a bit string of length n, is the number of non-zero coordinates. The number of non-zero coordinates of a bit string of length n gives the Hamming weight of that word. The minimum distance of a linear code C is the smallest Hamming weight of a non-zero code word in C. That is, um, the minimum distance is nothing but the smallest Hamming weight of the non-zero code word C. So when you can consider a n comma k comma d code C, where n is the length of the code words and k is the dimension of the code and d is the minimum distance. So with these parameters, you can know the error correction capacity of the code C. It's nothing but the error correction capacity T is equal to d minus 1 by 2, where d is the minimum distance between the two code words. So, till now we have seen what is a code and a generator matrix. A generator matrix is nothing but the that is formed with the basis of the code, and the code is nothing but the subspace of F to N. So, orthogonal complement of this code is also a subspace of F to N. So that also has a basis. That basis vectors forms a matrix that is called as a parity check matrix. So parity check matrix is nothing but a matrix formed with by the basis of the orthogonal complement of the code C. So a parity check matrix H of a n comma k linear code C is a n minus k cross n matrix whose row vectors form the basis of the orthogonal complement of the vector subspace C. So when you multiply H into C, it is equal to 0, since H is a basis for the orthogonal complement of C. So orthogonal complement, when you multiply with the C, the code word, it is equal to 0. So the code C is nothing but the collection of all code words C, such that H into C transpose is equal to 0. So the syndrome of a word X in F to N for the parity check matrix H is a vector S in F to N minus K defined by S is equal to H into X transpose. When you multiply the parity check matrix with a word in F to N, it gives S. S is called the syndrome. When the syndrome is equal to 0, then we say the corresponding X is a code word. If when the syndrome is not equal to 0, we say that X is an error. It's an error, X is an error vector. So next we can see what's a syndrome decoding problem. Let consider a tuple, that is three tuple H comma T comma S consisting a matrix H and an integer T less than N and a vector S in F2 N minus K. So find a vector E in F to N of weight less than or equal to T such that H E transpose is equal to S transpose. That is, given a parity check matrix of a code and a syndrome, finding a vector of weight less than or equal to T is a syndrome decoding problem. Berlingham, McEllis, and Van Tilburg in 1978 showed that the syndrome decoding problem is NP-complete. In 1978, McEllis proposed a crypto system with binary COPA codes. We have already seen that idea of McEllis crypto system, that we are using a matrix corresponding to a code. That code is nothing but a binary COPA code. Mediator applies the same idea of McEllis in his encryption scheme, but he uses the parity check matrix H of a linear code C instead of the generator matrix. Mediator algorithm was used to construct CFS signature, that is Curtis, Phineas, and Sendria's signature scheme. The security of the schemes are based on the syndrome decoding problem and NP-complete problem. That is a crypto system. We can see the mediator crypto system, which consists of three processes: the key generation, signature process, and verification process. Select N, K, and T according to the security parameter kappa. So these are the security parameter of the code word. Sorry, not code word, it's code. So you are selecting NKT code, that is for length N and the dimension K, and the error correction capacity is T. Pick a random parity check matrix H of a N comma K binary Gopa code. So this is your good matrix. H is your good matrix. Choose a random n minus k cross n minus k non-singular matrix Q, a random n cross n permutation matrix P, and a hash function H defined from a bit string of arbitrary length to a bit string of length n minus k. So the good matrix is H. Now pre-multiply and post-multiply them with Q and P. So the resultant is the public key. That is, H bar is equal to QHP. Here, H bar is the public key and the private key is QHP. Mediator applies the same idea of Michaelis to encrypt. That is, instead of generator matrix, he uses the party check matrix to encrypt the message. So, let M be a message corresponding to the message M. She chooses a clear text X of weight T, then computes H bar into X transpose. Y is the ciphertext corresponding to the message M. That is, this clear text X corresponds to the message M. Now to decrypt the ciphertext, Bob has the private key H, Q, and P. So Alice just encrypts using the public key of the Bob, H bar. Thus, she multiplies H bar with X transpose. She gets the ciphertext Y she sends to Bob. Now, Bob decrypts using his secret key as follows. So, he has now Y, the ciphertext, just he multiplies with Q inverse. So that is equal to Q inverse into Y means in Y we are having H bar X transpose. In H bar we are having QH P transpose. So when you multiply with Q inverse, the resultant is HP X transpose. Next, Bob knows the efficient decoding algorithm corresponding to this private key H. So using his private key knowledge, he gets back Px transpose. Next, with the knowledge of P inverse, he computes X transpose. So Bob decrypts the ciphertext and get back the X. So when you look at from the attacker point of view, the attacker knows only the ciphertext and only the public key H bar. With the knowledge of Y and H bar, getting X is equivalent to solving the syndrome decoding problem. So the security of this mediator crypto system is based on the security of the syndrome decoding problem. So we can see the pros and cons of code-based crypto system. Advantages. No attack is known to represent a serious threat on the Michaelis crypto system for 4 decades, even on a quantum computer. So the system is simple and fast as their operations are on matrices. It is a safe alternative crypto system. Limitations. Code-based crypto systems are held back for practical adoption because of their large public keys. Next, we can see lattice-based cryptography. So this picture is a lattice. In geometry, a lattice may be viewed as a regularly spaced grid of points stretching out to infinity. So fancy name for a grid point is a vector. So a lattice is a collection of evenly spaced vectors. A lattice has many bases. All will give rise to the same lattice. So here we can see the good basis and bad basis. A good basis is nothing but a collection of short vectors which are almost orthogonal, and bad basis is collection of long vectors which are almost parallel. All the bases end up in generating the same lattice. A good bases are much more useful than bad bases when it comes to solving hard lattice problems. Let us see the hard problems in lattice. Suppose we are given a bad basis for some lattice L. Then the short vector problem asks us to find a vector in lattice as close as possible to the origin vector. That is when a bad basis is given to you, and we have to find out the shortest vector to the origin. That is with the long vectors it is not easy to find the short vectors. So here we have taken a two-dimension vector space. It is easy to compute, but for lattice with higher dimensions, say 1000, it is difficult to find out the short vector even with quantum computer. So with the knowledge of long vector, that is with the knowledge of bad basis, means it is a knowledge of long vectors, it is difficult to find out the short vector. So next we can see the uh, closest vector hard problem. This is another hard problem in lattice based cryptography. That is, suppose we are given a long basis, that is bad basis, for some lattice L. We are given a challenge point P. Here we have denoted in green color. The closest vector problem asks us to find out the closest lattice point in L to the challenge point P. That is, the challenge point need not be in a lattice point. We have to find out a closest lattice point to the challenge point. This is the closest vector problem. Again, it is difficult with the knowledge of the bad basis, but when we know the good basis, you can easily compute it. And the short basis problem is another hard problem. Suppose we are given a bad basis for some lattice L. The short basis problem is asks us to find out the short basis for the lattice L. So, which we have to answer these questions, that is with the knowledge of the bad basis. Which lattice point is closest to the origin point is the shortest vector problem, and which lattice point is closest to a randomly chosen point is the closest vector problem. It is easy to answer in two-dimensional space, but when we go for the higher dimension space, it is easy to answer only with the knowledge of the good basis. So the advantages and the limitations of lattice-based crypto systems. The systems are useful for public key encryption, signatures, etc. Lattice-based cryptography have strong security proofs based on worst-case hardness. They are relatively efficient and flexible. Lattice-based cryptography require large public keys. They need more work to increase the confidence in the security. Next, we can see multivariate cryptography. It is based on the difficulty of solving nonlinear, usually quadratic polynomial over a finite field. The hardness of system depends on the size of the finite field, variables and the degree of the system. For building asymmetric public key system, the public key is a set of multivariate quadratic polynomial and the private key is the knowledge of the trapdoor that allows solving the multivariate system. So the public key is nothing but the system of equations, that is multivariate quadratic polynomials, and the private key is the knowledge of finding the solution to that system. Most promoting signature scheme include unbalanced oil and vinegar, abbreviated as UOV, and rainbow schemes. Multivariate cryptography's pros and cons. The multivariate cryptography provides the shortest signature among post-quantum algorithms. The signature schemes signing and verifying speeds are relatively fast. Limitations: they require large public keys, lower estimated security when compared to the other post-quantum schemes. Various attempts in building secure multivariate encryption schemes have been failed. So, similar to hash-based hash-based cryptography, we are having here also only signature schemes. Isogeny-based cryptography is based on the difficulty in finding isogenies between supersingular elliptic curves on a single finite field. Supersingular isogeny Diffie-Hellman was created by Geo D in 2011. A supersingular isogeny Diffie-Hellman uses conventional elliptic curve operations. Isogeny-based cryptography's pros and cons. The advantages is supersingular Diffie-Hellman found to be an efficient replacement for elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman in quantum world. We know that elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman is based on discrete log problem, and it is broken in quantum computer. Hence, super singular isogeny based Diffie-Hellman will be found to be an efficient replacement for elliptic curve Diffie-Hellman in quantum world. The limitations: the ciphertext and keys are small, slow in computations, and isogeny based cryptography requires more research to be carried out to increase the confidence. Next, we can see NIST's proposal. US National Institute of Standards and Technology initiated the process to standardize the post-quantum public key cryptographic algorithms. NIST announced, that's the first announcement came in February 2016. It invites the proposals at PQ Crypto Conference. That is in 2017, for round 1, 71 submissions were received. Among them, 22 signature schemes and 49 encryption schemes. In January 2019, round 2 candidates were announced. So 26 were survived from 71 submissions. Among 26, 9 signature schemes and 17 encryption schemes. So this table shows the second round candidates. That is 12 from Lattice, 7 from Code, and 4 from multivariate based cryptography, 1 from hash based, 1 from isogeny, and 1 from other fields. So lattice based cryptography makes up the lion's share from the total submission, almost 12 shares, right? The finalists will be announced by 2024. That is, US is focusing on standardizing the post-quantum secure schemes. So by 2024, we will get some standard post-quantum cryptographic schemes. So from then onwards, we can start using this those schemes for practical purpose. So the challenges. So the following are the research challenges. So computational efficiency, memory requirement, ease of implementation, secure implementation, ease of use. So under computational efficiency, so we can the research challenges are to reduce the key generation time, encryption decryption time, signing verification time, and key exchange times. So under memory requirement, so we have to build the systems with the proper parameter sets. That is, concrete parameter sets and key sizes for target security levels are required. And the we have to construct the system in such a way that the ciphertext size and the signature size are minimum. That is, it requires less memory requirement. So under hardware and software, so it is necessary to select tunable parameters, and it is necessary to build the systems which are implementable on wide variety of platforms and applications. Necessary to build the systems such a way that they are parallelizable, and the system should resist to side channel attacks, and it should be a lightweight instantiation. And the reference for post quantum cryptography is the book from Daniel Bernstein, Johns Buchman, and Eric Deman. Thank you.